In this video, I'm going to show you how to add speed lines to either text or illustrations. It really doesn't matter which one you want to do, much like on the S of the word speed right here, because it's actually pretty easy to do and it's been a very popular style and it continues to be a very popular style. So I'm going to show you a way that I do it that I think tends to work the best and look the best overall so that you can add it to your own projects. So over here, I have sort of the different steps that I went in order to create this effect. So here's like the baseline word. Here's where I start adding in a line to the word. And then on this example is where I start to build it out and really make it work. So I'm just going to duplicate this word speed off to the side here because this is the one that we can look at and begin to work with. So a few things you might want to do before we get started. If you want to copy this text exactly, it's a font called Alley Display, and it's a totally free font on Font Squirrel. So if you want to use this particular font, there will be a link in the description of this video that you can check out, download, and get ready before you actually start doing this stuff. Also, you want to make sure your stroke window's open. It's right here on my screen, kind of in my upper right hand corner. It'll just be helpful. If your stroke window is not open, just go to Window, and then sort of near the bottom, there's Stroke. Make sure there's a checkbox next to it, which basically means it's on your screen somewhere, and you just have to find it. And if there is no checkbox, just click on the word Stroke. And also, if you go to Edit, and then Preferences, and then General. And if you're using an Apple computer instead of a Windows-based computer, you might have to go to Illustrator, and then Preferences, and then General, but I don't completely remember which one it is on a Mac, so feel free to find the Preferences window on your particular device and then go from there. And basically the only thing that matters about the Preferences window is there's something called Scale Strokes and Effects in the General tab. You might want to make sure it's unchecked just because the way we're going to be doing this, it helps to not have that checked. So if you resize basically stroked things, they don't continually change the weight of the stroke, which can be a bit frustrating when you're trying to line stuff up. So just uncheck that if it's checked and then hit OK. And at the end of the video, if you want that back on, you can just go back through the same steps, but just make sure you check it. So here we have the word speed, and this is what we're going to be using. So once you have everything ready to go, next up, what I'm going to grab is the pen tool. It's here on my toolbar. And if you hit the letter P on your keyboard, that'll bring up the pen tool. And basically, you just want to click once on the object where you want to draw your first line, and then hold down Shift and then click again off to where you want that line to extend to. Basically, holding Shift makes that line perfectly straight, which is just helpful when you're working on stuff like this. And then you want to make sure that you have basically a stroke that's filled in with no fill. So in this case, we have a black fill with nothing on the stroke, which I think is the default way that Illustrator is loaded. So I'm going to hit Shift and then X to basically swap these two. Alternatively, if you want to add a stroke a different way, you can just click between these two. So the solid one is the fill, and the one that has a square knocked out of the middle is the stroke. Just double click on those to change it to be whatever color it is you want it to be. And for example, on the fill, if you want to remove the fill, just make sure you click on that so it's up in the front here. And then below that to the right, there's a little box that says none. When you hover over it, it looks like a white square with a red diagonal line going through it. Just click on that red diagonal line and it will go ahead and remove the fill. And then you should be pretty good to go here. So here we have our stroked line, and I'm just going to zoom in a little bit closer so we can take a look at it. If I zoom in really close, you can see that the end cap is a straight line going vertical. So under your stroke window, you want to go to Cap, which is right below weight. And then on cap, there's a middle one that will say round cap. You just want to click that, which will then make this a rounded cap as opposed to that straight one, which just helps with the style we're trying to get here a little bit better. And then also when it's highlighted, you can go ahead and change the stroke size. So I'm going to make this one 7 point, which works well for the size of my text here. I've found that it tends to look a little bit better if you make the stroke a little bit thicker, but if you want it to be really thin, that's totally up to you. It's kind of like a stylistic choice. It's not really all that big of a deal, so just make it look the way you want it to look. And also something else you might want to do, as I hover over the stroke line and I go to the middle here, you can see in pink, it's pretty small on my screen, I'm sure, but it says the word path, and that's basically smart guides. Smart guides will be helpful when we're doing this. To turn on smart guides, if you don't see any sort of notification pop up when you highlight over something like the middle of this line, you just hit Control U on a PC or Command U on a Mac, and that'll turn on smart guides. If you hit it again, it turns it off. So that's how you can toggle on and off really quickly, but having it on is just in general helpful. So you can go ahead and kind of line up your first one right here. I tend to find it works the best if you make these extend the entire length of the word. So if I go to my example off to the side here and then zoom in on the letter S, you can see that the top one is at the very top of this and the bottom one is at the very bottom, and there's no gaps between them. They're all totally filled and connected between what is essentially a black stroke line right here that I'm going over with my mouse, and then what was a white stroked line that I then removed afterwards. So it just makes this a complete seamless look, which I think just helps it look a little bit better, but I'll go over how to do that at sort of near the end of this video. Next up, what we want to do is make this a seamless pattern, much like we had before. So I'm just going to highlight this stroked line right here. So just that selected. Make sure you don't have both the line and your type selected. If you can't select just your line, which you should be able to, but if you highlight them both, then you hold down Shift and click on your word, it'll unselect just what you Shift clicked on, and then you're pretty much good to go. So I'm going to hit Control plus C on a PC or Command plus C on a Mac, and then Control plus F on a PC or Command plus F on a Mac, which will copy and then paste this in place. So right now what is currently selected is another version of this stroke line on top of the old one. So I'm going to right click on this. I'm going to go to Transform, and from Transform I'm going to go to Move. Alternatively, as this is showing right here, if I hold down Shift Control plus M on a PC or Shift Command plus M on a Mac, that'll bring up the move command as well if you want to use a shorter shortcut. But once this move window is open, we can go ahead and just move this however many points we made that stroke. So this stroke weight is 7 point. So what we want to do is move horizontal none, because that's, the horizontal left to right. And then vertical, we want to make this 7 points. So I'm just going to hit 7 right here and then click on horizontal. And because preview is checked right here, it's showing this move. So it moved it perfectly, exactly 7 points to match the one previously. So right here we have two lines that are perfectly lined up with each other. You could try to do this on your own and line it up perfectly, but it's actually really hard to do without making them overlap. And that's why I find the move command to be so helpful here. And you can do the same process when you select both of these lines that you've now made. In this case, I can tell I selected the word too, so I'm going to hold Shift and just click on that, and then that'll unselect just the word. So once again, hit Control plus C on a PC or Command plus C on a Mac, and then Control plus F on a PC or Command plus F on a Mac to paste it in place. Once again, right click, Transform, and then Move. And this time, instead of moving this 7 point, it moved it to 6.9 for some reason. But because we have twice the amount of lines that are both 7 points, we want to make this 14, which will make it basically clear this 14-point gap that we created. Hit OK when we're done. And the next part is actually really easy to do because we have smart guides on. So you can just highlight all these lines that you've created. And then when you go to the top line right here where it will say path when you highlight over it, if you have smart guides turned on, you want to hold down Alt on a PC or Option on a Mac, click and start dragging it down. And as you're dragging it down, hold Shift so it's on a perfect vertical. And once you get exactly 7 points gap between these lines on the right here, I'm going to try to move this, but it's not letting me. But if you look at the pink lines on the right side of this, it says 7 point, and it kind of shows these little rulers saying that this is exactly 7 points. That's precisely what we want to do right here because it will make this line up perfectly just like the other one did. So I'm going to let go. And then it went ahead and moved this. And if you leave these selected and don't click off after you do that step, you can then hit Control plus D on a PC or Command plus D on a Mac to duplicate the thing that you just did. So very quickly, we went ahead and filled all of this in. So I'm just going to select now each one of these. I'm going to hold down Shift as I do this. So basically, we're going to make these black, white, black, white. So I'm just going to click on every other one until I get all these selected so I can go ahead and do this conversion really quickly. So right here we have them all, and I'm actually going to delete this one on the bottom here, so I'm not going to click on that one. But I'm going to go to my stroke right here and double click on that to bring up the color picker and change these to white. So as you can see, it went ahead and did that. And then I'm just going to go ahead and delete this one over at the bottom, then select all these and kind of move them off to the left here. I'm just using the arrow keys on my keyboard to do this. So now that's like honestly the hardest part of doing this. It's really fast and quite easy from here. So using the selection tool or the black arrow, you can start to move these around and kind of resize them as you see fit. So if you click on this once, and this is a cool part of using a stroke line, you can just grab the anchor point here and drag it inwards to make the length change. And what I found tends to work the best is if the white basically covers up the entire angle of whatever object you're working on. And if the white lines extend way past, it really doesn't matter. And it's totally up to you how you want to style these and kind of make these flow. So in this case, I'm just going to make kind of a similar arcing pattern to how the actual letter is formed. And I often just grab the white ones, pull them off to the side, and then make sure they kind of just slightly overlap. I can also use my arrow keys when this is selected to kind of nudge it around until it looks close to the way I want it to look. And also, if you want to make black lines that look kind of like this one does right here, where you have additional black lines off to the left-hand side, you can just click on one of the black lines. And then once again, you want to hold down Alt on a PC or Option on a Mac, click, hold, and drag while holding Shift so it's on that perfect horizontal. Then you can just grab this endpoint right here and make it really small in order to make a somewhat circular shape. And you can also drag this really close to being pretty much on top of each other to make what is essentially a circle right there. if that's a stylistic choice that you want to make. But as you can see, it's pretty easy to do that. And then you can, of course, even just duplicate these again and again if you want to do multiple ones. Kind of up to you how you want this to be styled. So I'm just gonna keep on going fairly quickly right here until I get this looking kind of close to the way I want it to look. And because this is a letter S, it does have a ton of curves and it's actually a little bit more difficult than some other ones, but just in general, I've found it works good if you always make sure that they completely overlap whatever edge of the shape you're working with. So you always want to make sure it's at least connecting that much on top of it, and then just size in the way that you think looks the best. This area right here is actually pretty tricky because if I move this way over, you can see that there's this end point of the S, which looks kind of awkward. So in this case, I actually want to cover that up entirely just to make that not look a little bit too crazy there. But there's just in general a lot of small stylistic choices that you're going to have to make in order to make this look the best it can. So just a lot of choices being made really fast here by me, which may or may not look good, but it's kind of up to you to decide how you want this to look when you are doing it. But anyways, we have a pretty rough example here of how this should be going. I noticed this line for some reason is moved out, so I'm going to move that in here. And there we go. We have kind of this crazy looking S that's almost like a dripping paint or similar effect to that. So next up, we want to make sure that these lines overlap on top and bottom of this letter S perfectly. I don't think this looks bad like this, but I just like lining up stuff completely all the way to the top and the bottom to really complete that effect. And a really easy way to do that is I'm just going to duplicate this whole thing by selecting over it all, holding down Alt, and then just dragging this down here so we have a secondary copy, because I'm going to be expanding this stuff and I don't want to accidentally delete or overwrite the changes that I've made. So this is how I tend to work, is I make layers of stuff on top of each other. Some of my files can look pretty crazy with like stacks of slight changes because of that, but it helps me always have a history in a sense of the stuff I've done when I save over it and close it and open up again in case I want to make changes later on down the road. So I'm going to highlight over everything that I just made right here as far as these lines go. I'm going to hold Shift and click on the type so that's not selected. And then I'm going to go to Object up here in the menu, and from Object I want to go to Expand, and from Expand it'll usually have Fill and Stroke both selected, but all that really matters is that you're expanding the strokes, so just make sure that is at least checked and then hit OK. So now as you can see, it expanded all these different strokes right here, so you can see each one of these individual stroke things kind of fully expanded, and you can kind of tell where they all lie in terms of the artwork here. So now it's pretty easy. I can just hold Shift and grab on one of the corners here to rescale this up until it's basically at the top, and then go down to the bottom and do the same thing. I might have to move these around a little bit once again after doing this. Black line is a little bit different. Stuff kind of moved around, so I just have to push this one out a tiny bit. And as you move around your lines after you've expanded it, don't grab the corner and just push it in, because it changes the angle of these lines, that rounded line, as you can tell. What you want to do is grab the white arrow or direct selection tool, which is A on your keyboard, and then just click in the middle kind of so you can kind of see where these points are and click off of it. And then you can go ahead and just click these little points one by one, and then you can individually, once they're all three selected. And as you click them, by the way, to select multiple ones, you just click on one, and then you hold down Shift and click the other ones. Shift is basically always what you use to select multiple things at once. And then just hold Shift as you move it over to the side here, which keeps it on a straight plane, and you can resize stuff very quickly and easily by doing that. So I'm just going to move this one back over here. Whoops, I missed a point apparently because that went kind of crazy. Move this back over here a little bit, and this is close enough for this tutorial. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but as you can tell, now we have these lined up perfectly, or close enough anyways, on the top and the bottom here. So for the final step, to make it a complete object, much like we have right here where everything is knocked out. So if I were to just change the fill here to something like a relatively hot pink color, I'm going to draw a box behind this, and then I'm going to arrange it and send it to the back. I'm not going to explain this because it's just to show these are no longer white objects here. It's completely knocked out. So to knock out an object much like that, I'm going to duplicate this once again below here so that I don't overwrite these changes in case I want to edit it later on. I'm going to click on my type, right click on my type, and then create outlines. So once again, I went over that pretty quick. I'm just going to make sure my type is selected, and then I'm going to right click on it. And once I right click, I want to create outlines, which will then outline my type right here. So now instead of being live working type, it's outlined, which means you can do basic modifications to it. And you want your Pathfinder window open, which is right here on my screen. I'm just moving it around. To get the Pathfinder window open, you go to Window, and then from Window, you go to Pathfinder. It's roughly 2/3 of the way down. Just find Pathfinder, make sure there's a checkbox next to it. And if there is, you'll find that on your screen. So what you want to do right here is select just the white boxes. I'm holding Shift as I'm clicking these just to select all the different little white stroked objects that we expanded before. And then I'm also going to hold down Shift and click on the word right here. And if you're working with an object, just click on that object. And because these are on top of the black object below it and the white ones are selected, from the shape modes menu, the second one from the left is called minus front, which essentially knocks out whatever's on top from whatever's on bottom. So I'm going to click on that after I've had all these different things selected. And actually, before I did this, I forgot to say, in order to make this work well, after you've outlined or created outlines on your type, if it is a multiple letter type like this, you want to right click it and then ungroup it. Because if you don't ungroup it and you use this next thing, it can kind of freak out sometimes and does things that you don't want it to do. So once I'm going to reselect all these really fast right here, just so all the white is selected, I'm going to click on just the letter S. So now just the letter S is selected. And from this right here, I'm going to click on minus front, which is the second from the left. If you highlight over it, it'll say minus front. And I'm just going to go ahead and click on this one time, which will subtract those white lines from the black letter we have right here. And then since the black lines right here aren't part of this letter, they're just overlapping it, I'm going to highlight everything. So all these things I've created are selected, including just that letter. And from the shape modes, I'm going to click on the furthest left one, which is called Unite. As you hover over it, it'll say Unite. So just click on that, which will then unite all these different shapes into one. So now this is one complete shape. And much like I showed last time when I changed the colors of this, if I make a little box beneath of it, well, that's not at all what I meant to do. But anyways, I'll just put a black box underneath of it now because I'm very skilled at this apparently. So I'm going to draw a black box, arrange it, send it to back like that. And then we can tell that this is now an object that is completely knocked out and totally on its own. So that's pretty cool. Very easy to do there, as you saw, which is always a plus. But anyways, once you're done with that, you can then go ahead and do the kerning by just moving these letters around as you see fit. But we're essentially done here. So that is it for how to make these speedy looking lines inside Adobe Illustrator. So if you did like this tutorial, feel free to hit the like button and also favorite. And of course, leave a comment if you have any additional questions or you just want to talk to people or show people what you've made using this tutorial. Feel free to drop some links in there of the work that you've created. And also, if you did like this video and you want to see more, consider subscribing. I do my best to keep creating new content just like this for illustrators and designers. Thanks so much for watching.